My Sil was secretly in love with my husband's best friend, so she tried to destroy my marriage by planting fake evidence and making everyone think I was a gold digger. I, 34F, have been married to my husband Tom, 36M, for 8 years. Our story began at a small coffee shop where I worked as a barista while finishing my degree in business administration. Tom would come in every morning before heading to his office at a tech company where he worked as a software developer. What started as casual conversations over coffee turned into something more when he finally asked me out after 6 months. The problem started with his sister Sarah, 38F, from day one. When Tom first introduced me to her, she barely acknowledged my presence and later told Tom that I was too young for him and probably just after his money since he had a good job in tech. This hurt because I had no idea about Tom's financial situation when we met. I just knew him as the kind guy who always left good tips and made me laugh during my morning shifts. There's some background needed here. Tom and Sarah lost their parents in a terrible car accident when they were teenagers. Their Aunt Rachel took them in, but Sarah, being the older sibling by 2 years, took on a very protective role with Tom. She basically mothered him through their high school years and even followed him to the same college to keep an eye on him. Tom told me that Sarah had always been overprotective, but it got worse after their parents died. Despite Sarah's clear disapproval, Tom and I dated for 2 years before getting married. During our dating period, Sarah tried everything to break us up. She would set Tom up on blind dates without telling him, conveniently forgetting to mention he had a girlfriend. She would bring up his ex-girlfriend Amy at every family gathering, talking about how successful and perfect she was. She even tried to convince Tom that I was too uneducated to be with him, even though I was working on my degree. Our wedding day should have been perfect, but Sarah made sure it wasn't. She showed up wearing white, which Tom asked her to change, thankfully, gave a passive-aggressive speech about hoping I knew what I was getting into with her precious brother, and spent the entire reception telling anyone who would listen that she gave our marriage 6 months tops. After the wedding, things got even worse. Sarah would show up at our house unannounced at least 3 times a week, usually around dinner time. She would criticize everything. My cooking wasn't healthy enough for Tom, the house wasn't clean enough, I didn't dress appropriately for a software developer's wife, whatever that means. I worked too much at my new job in office administration. Tom always defended me, but I could see how much it pained him to be caught between his sister and his wife. Things took a drastic turn 3 years ago. Sarah's husband Mike lost his job in the economic downturn. He had been working in construction management, but his company went bankrupt and he was struggling to find new work. They had 2 kids, Emily, 12F, and Jake, 8M, and were falling behind on their mortgage payments. Tom, being the kind person he is, offered to let them stay with us until they got back on their feet. I wasn't thrilled about the idea of living with Sarah, but I agreed because I knew it was important to Tom, and I genuinely felt bad for the kids. That's when living with Sarah became a complete nightmare. She took over our house like she owned it. She would rearrange our furniture without asking because apparently my taste was too modern. She would go through our closets and drawers while cleaning, making comments about how I was wasting Tom's money on expensive clothes. I shop at Target. She told the kids not to listen to me because I wasn't their real aunt and I had no right to tell them what to do, even when they were jumping on our new couch or running around with food. The worst part was how she would undermine me in my own home. If I cooked dinner, she would make faces and order takeout for herself and the kids. If I did laundry, she would rewash Tom's clothes because I apparently wasn't doing it right. She would answer our house phone and tell my friends I was too busy to talk. When Tom would try to have a date night with me, she would guilt him about leaving her alone with the kids, even though Mike was there. Last month, everything came to a head. I was cleaning the guest room where Sarah and her family were staying. Yes, I still cleaned their room even though Sarah complained about how I did it. That's when I found her diary on the bed, open to a page with my name on it. I know I shouldn't have read it, but something made me look closer. What I read made me feel physically sick. Sarah had been actively trying to break up my marriage. She had been sending Tom's ex-girlfriend Amy pictures of us arguing, telling her that Tom was unhappy and thinking about leaving me. She had created a fake email account pretending to be one of Tom's co-workers, sending messages to his other friends about how Tom confided that he regretted marrying me. She had been telling Tom's colleagues that I was cheating on him with my co-worker Brian, who is happily married and has never been anything but professional with me. But the worst part was her future plans. She had bought a burner phone and was planning to plant it in our bedroom with fake text messages making it look like I was having an affair. According to her diary, she was going to wait until Tom was home and then pretend to find it while cleaning. She had even practiced her shocked reaction in the mirror. I confronted Sarah right then and there. Instead of denying it, she just laughed in my face. She told me that eventually, Tom would see that I wasn't right for him, that I was just a gold digger who got lucky with her coffee shop flirting. I called Tom at work and asked him to come home immediately. When he got home and I showed him the diary, he went completely pale before becoming furious in a way I'd never seen before. He told Sarah she had 24 hours to get out of our house. Sarah started crying and begging, pulling out every manipulation tactic she could think of. She brought up their parents, saying they would be ashamed of him choosing a wife over his sister. She reminded him of all the times she took care of him growing up, how she gave up scholarships to stay close to him in college. But Tom stood firm. He told her that she had crossed a line and he couldn't forgive her for trying to destroy his marriage. Mike came home from work and found out what happened. Instead of apologizing for his wife's behavior, he started yelling at me for invading Sarah's privacy by reading her diary. He completely ignored the fact that his wife was plotting to destroy our marriage. Emily and Jake were crying, confused about what was happening, while Sarah was still trying to convince Tom that she was doing it for his own good. They left that night to stay with Aunt Rachel. Since then, Sarah has been calling every family member, telling them that I broke up their family and made them homeless. Some family members are saying I should have handled it differently, that I should have talked to Sarah privately instead of involving Tom right away. A few have suggested that since they have nowhere else to go, we should let them come back and try to work things out. But I don't think I did anything wrong. She was trying to destroy my marriage and my life. Tom is fully supporting me, but I can see he's struggling with cutting off his sister. The kids haven't spoken to us since they left, and Aunt Rachel keeps calling to tell us we're being cruel to family. Ida? Update 1. These past 2 weeks have been absolute chaos. After my last post, things got much worse before they showed any signs of improving. I think I need to break down everything that happened because it's been a whirlwind of events. First, Tom and I spent several nights just talking through everything. He was completely devastated by his sister's betrayal. He kept going through old photos from their childhood, trying to understand how the sister who had protected him and cared for him after their parents died could turn into someone capable of such manipulation. He even found their old diaries from right after the accident, where Sarah had written about how she would always protect Tom and keep him safe. Reading those entries now just made everything feel even more twisted. But just when we thought we were starting to process everything, Sarah decided to escalate things to a whole new level. Last week, I was called into my boss's office first thing in the morning. There were 2 people from our corporate office there, and my heart dropped when I saw the stack of papers on the desk. Sarah had sent multiple emails to my workplace, complete with fabricated bank statements and fake screenshots of transactions, claiming that I had been embezzling money from the company where I work as an office manager. She had clearly put a lot of effort into making the documents look real. She had used actual company letterhead, which she must have taken photos of when she was snooping around our house, created fake transaction records, and even forged signatures. The company had to do a full audit of all my work. I spent 3 days being interviewed by our internal investigation team, having to explain every transaction I had ever processed, every invoice I had ever handled. They even went through my personal bank accounts to make sure there were no suspicious deposits. Thankfully, the audit proved that everything was clean, and my boss was understanding once I explained the situation. But the damage to my professional reputation was already done. The rumors had spread through the office, and even though I was cleared, I could see how some colleagues started treating me differently. Some stopped inviting me to lunch, others would go quiet when I entered the break room. It was humiliating. But Sarah wasn't done. While I was dealing with the work situation, she was busy spreading rumors in our social circle. She told everyone that the real reason she and her family had to leave was because she caught me stealing money from her purse. She claimed she had noticed money missing several times but didn't want to believe it was me. According to her story, she set up a trap by marking some bills in her wallet, and then caught me red-handed trying to take them. The worst part was that some of our mutual friends actually believed her. 3 couples that we regularly had dinner with stopped responding to our messages. One of my closest friends, who had known Tom and Sarah for years before I came into the picture, called me to say she was disappointed in me and needed space from our friendship. It was heartbreaking to realize how easily people could believe these lies about me. Tom was furious when he found out about the rumors. He sent a mass email to everyone in our social circle explaining the truth, attaching pictures of the diary entries as proof. Some friends apologized after seeing the evidence, but others said we were the ones crossing a line by sharing Sarah's private writings. It felt like we couldn't win no matter what we did. Then came the most shocking revelation. Mike contacted Tom privately through a burner email account. He confessed that Sarah's obsession with breaking up our marriage went much deeper than we had realized. She had been keeping detailed records since the day Tom and I got married. She had a spreadsheet tracking every argument Tom and I had, every time I came home late from work, every male friend or coworker I interacted with. She even had a folder of surveillance photos of me going about my daily routines, which Mike found disturbing but she insisted were necessary for protecting her brother. Mike admitted that he had tried to talk her out of her schemes many times over the years. He said she would sometimes seem to understand that her behavior was wrong, but then she would get triggered by something, maybe seeing Tom and me happy at a family gathering, or hearing about us planning a vacation, and she would spiral back into her obsession. He apologized for not speaking up sooner and for yelling at me about the diary. He said he had been trying to protect his kids from realizing how unstable their mother was becoming. Speaking of the kids, we discovered that Sarah had been poisoning their minds against me for years. Emily, my niece, sent me a heartbreaking message through social media. She apologized for believing her mom's lies and explained how Sarah had convinced them that I was trying to steal their inheritance from their grandparents. Sarah had told the kids that Tom and Sarah's parents had left money for both of them, but I was trying to convince Tom to keep it all for ourselves. She had even told them that's why we let them move in, so I could keep an eye on Sarah and make sure she couldn't fight for her inheritance. The reality is that Tom and Sarah's parents left modest life insurance policies that were split between them years ago. Sarah had already spent her portion during a rough patch before Mike lost his job. Tom had invested his portion, which Sarah had always resented. But she twisted this truth into an ongoing conspiracy in her children's minds. Tom is now working with a lawyer to get a cease and desist order against Sarah. We don't want to press criminal charges because of the kids, they've been through enough trauma already. But we need a legal system to step in and stop her from spreading more lies about us. The lawyer says we have a strong case given the evidence from her diary and the fake documents she sent to my workplace. What's interesting is that even Aunt Rachel, who initially sided with Sarah and called us cruel for kicking them out, has now distanced herself from Sarah. After seeing the evidence Tom shared, particularly the elaborate plans to frame me for infidelity and theft, she called us to apologize. She said she had always known Sarah was overly attached to Tom, but she never imagined it would turn into something this destructive. The hardest part through all of this has been watching Tom struggle with his grief. The sister who helped raise him, who packed his lunches for school and helped him with his homework, who held him while he cried after their parents' funeral, that person is gone. In her place is someone he doesn't recognize, someone capable of calculated cruelty and manipulation. He keeps asking himself if he missed warning signs over the years, if he could have done something differently. I'm trying my best to be supportive, but it's difficult seeing him in so much pain while also dealing with my own feelings of betrayal and humiliation. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and we've discovered some shocking information that puts everything in a completely different light. The truth about Sarah's behavior goes much deeper than any of us imagined, and it started long before I came into the picture. 2 weeks ago, we received a thick envelope from Mike's sister Jenny. When Sarah and her family moved out of our house, they had left some boxes at Jenny's place for temporary storage. While helping them organize their things, Jenny found another diary of Sarah's, much older than the one I had discovered. She debated for weeks whether to tell us about it, but after seeing how Sarah's behavior was escalating with the workplace harassment and rumors, she decided we needed to know the truth. The diary entries went back to Tom's college years, and they revealed something none of us knew. Sarah had been in love with Tom's best friend from college, David, for over a decade. David and Tom had been roommates in college, and Sarah would often visit their dorm under the pretense of checking on her brother. According to her writings, she had fallen for David during these visits but never told anyone about her feelings. When Tom and I started dating, Sarah had just discovered that David had expressed interest in me. There were several entries from that time where Sarah wrote about seeing David at a mutual friend's party, and he had mentioned that he thought I was attractive and had considered asking me out. But by then, I was already dating Tom. Sarah had apparently spiraled after this revelation. She wrote pages and pages about how I had ruined everything, how I had stolen not just her brother but also the man she loved. Jenny shared copies of the most relevant diary entries with us. They were disturbing to read. Sarah had convinced herself that if she could break up my marriage with Tom, David would finally notice her. She believed that David had only been interested in me because I was with Tom, and if she could prove I was unfaithful or unworthy, both Tom and David would see her true value. What makes this even more tragic is that David got married last year to his college sweetheart, Lucy. They had reconnected at a reunion, and Sarah had attended their wedding as Tom's +1. I was sick with the flu that weekend. According to Jenny, Sarah had a complete breakdown in the bathroom at the wedding reception. Jenny had found her crying but assumed it was just emotional because of the romantic atmosphere. Now we know the truth. Seeing David marry someone else had sent Sarah into an even deeper obsession with destroying my marriage. We also learned that Sarah had been stalking David and Lucy's social media accounts obsessively. She had created fake profiles to follow them and would spend hours analyzing their photos and posts. Jenny found dozens of screenshots saved on Sarah's laptop, with notes comparing Lucy to herself and me, pointing out our flaws and how she was better than both of us. Mike has finally reached his breaking point. After Jenny shared this information with him, he filed for divorce. He told us he had always known Sarah had issues with boundaries when it came to Tom, but he had no idea about her obsession with David or the extent of her delusions. He's seeking full custody of the kids, citing Sarah's unstable behavior and her history of manipulating the children emotionally. The custody filing led to even more revelations. During the preliminary hearing, Mike presented evidence that Sarah had been using the kids as spies throughout their stay with us. She would encourage them to eavesdrop on our conversations and report back to her. She would also coach them on what to say to Tom when I wasn't around, trying to make him doubt my character through seemingly innocent comments from the children. Emily, who has been spending more time with her dad since the separation, confessed that her mom would reward her with extra privileges when she reported anything negative about me, especially if it involved male coworkers or friends. Jake, too young to understand the manipulation, would make up stories sometimes just to please his mom. The court-appointed child psychologist has recommended therapy for both children to help them process this toxic behavior. The most surprising development has been Aunt Rachel's complete change of heart. While helping Mike pack up more of their things from her house, she found a box of old letters in her attic. These letters, dating back to before I was even in the picture, showed that Sarah had been sabotaging Tom's relationships for years. She had written to Rachel multiple times, expressing concerns about Tom's previous girlfriends and detailing her plans to break up these relationships. Rachel had kept these letters but had never taken them seriously, thinking Sarah was just being an overprotective sister. One letter particularly stood out. Sarah had written it right after Tom started dating his college girlfriend, describing how she had manipulated that relationship's end by convincing the girlfriend that Tom was still in love with his high school ex. She had done this because that girlfriend was friends with David, and Sarah couldn't bear the thought of David spending time with them as a couple. Tom is struggling to process all this new information. Finding out that his sister's issues run so much deeper than we thought, and that she had been manipulating his life for so many years even before I came along, has shaken him to his core. He started looking back at all his past relationships, questioning how many of them ended because of Sarah's interference. We've shared all this new information with our lawyer, who says it strengthens our case for the cease and desist order. The evidence of long-term manipulation and stalking behavior makes it clear that this isn't just a family dispute but a pattern of obsessive behavior that needs legal intervention. Update 3. This will be my final update on the situation. Despite numerous attempts by family members to mediate and find a peaceful resolution, things have only gotten worse. The past 3 months have been exhausting, and recent events have forced us to take more drastic measures than we initially wanted to. The cease and desist order didn't deter Sarah at all. Instead, she became more creative with her harassment. She created multiple fake social media accounts to continue spreading rumors about me. She would join local Facebook groups in our area and post long stories about how I had destroyed her family. She even started reaching out to my extended family members, trying to convince them that I was manipulating Tom. Some of our relatives tried to arrange family meetings to resolve the situation. Aunt Rachel hosted 2 attempts at mediation. The first one ended with Sarah storming out after Tom refused to admit that I had manipulated him into cutting her off. The second meeting was even worse. Sarah brought printed copies of old photos showing her taking care of Tom after their parents died, trying to guilt him into taking her side. When that didn't work, she started screaming about how I had stolen both Tom and David from her, revealing her obsession to everyone present. The final straw came last week when Sarah showed up at my workplace. I was in a meeting with clients when she burst into the conference room. She started screaming about how I had ruined her life, destroyed her marriage, and turned her children against her. She accused me of stealing David from her, claiming I had deliberately seduced Tom to make David jealous. Our security team had to physically remove her from the building while she continued screaming threats and accusations. My company has been incredibly supportive, but they're now considering legal action against Sarah for harassment. The incident was caught on security cameras, and several clients witnessed her behavior. My boss told me they need to protect their business reputation, and Sarah's actions could be seen as a threat to workplace safety. Mike won primary custody of the kids, with Sarah only getting supervised visitation rights twice a month. The court-appointed supervisor reported that Sarah often tries to question the kids about Tom and me during these visits, so they're considering reducing her visitation time. Emily and Jake are both in therapy now, working through the emotional manipulation they experienced. They've started visiting us again on weekends, and slowly, we're rebuilding our relationship with them. Emily, who's now 13, has been particularly brave through all of this. She confided in us that she feels guilty for participating in her mom's schemes, but her therapist is helping her understand that she was also a victim of manipulation. Jake is still struggling to understand why his mom acts the way she does, but he's opening up more in therapy. Tom has finally accepted that there's no salvaging his relationship with Sarah. After the workplace incident, he wrote her a long email explaining that while he would always care about her as his sister, he couldn't have her in his life anymore. He told her about the pain of realizing that she had been manipulating his relationship since college and how her obsession with David had warped her perception of everything. Sarah's response to the email was concerning enough that Tom forwarded it to her therapist. She was required to seek treatment as part of the custody agreement. She had written pages about how everyone was conspiring against her, how David would have loved her if it wasn't for me, and how Tom was under my spell just like their parents had been under their mom's spell. We've moved to a new house in a different part of the city and changed our phone numbers. Most of the family understands our decision to go no contact, even Aunt Rachel, who now admits she enabled Sarah's behavior over the years by dismissing her manipulative tendencies as just being an overprotective sister. Some well-meaning relatives have suggested family therapy, saying that Sarah's behavior stems from unresolved grief over losing her parents at a young age. But Tom and I agree that there's no coming back from this level of betrayal and manipulation. The Sarah that Tom grew up with, the sister who helped raise him after their parents died, is gone, if she ever really existed at all. All that's left is someone consumed by delusions and obsession. We're focusing now on healing and moving forward. Tom is working through his grief with a therapist, processing not just the loss of his sister but also the realization that many of his past relationships might have been sabotaged by her. I'm throwing myself into my work and spending time with the friends who stood by us. We're also making an effort to be there for Emily and Jake, trying to show them what healthy family relationships look like. Sometimes I catch Tom looking at old family photos, and I know he's thinking about Sarah and their childhood. But he always puts them away and tells me he's grateful that at least now he knows the truth. We both agree that while it's sad how everything turned out, we're better off with firm boundaries and no contact.